now we're getting to the point where we've got 4 fields here: digital, analog, the passwords, and load share as far as the setup. And to get access to those screens, we'll show you information here on how to go about doing that. So I've already put in my operator 3 password. You have to have password access because these are locked out to keep people from going in and making inadvertent changes. So the first place I want to start is on the digital. Okay, there's a number of features here. For example, you can enable and disable some of the inputs. By looking on the side of the screen here, there are little LEDs that indicate what the position of the switch is. So a normal state of a switch would show up here, for example, as off. And over here, we want to call that basically open. So you can set up your normal state for that input here. But one of the unique things about this, if we'll go over to a digital map on the main page, all right, we go over here to data, hit our digital. Okay, here's what we have set up as our standard digital input-output view. Okay, now let's go back here to our setup screen once again. And let's turn on, for example, digital input number 7 and number 8. And then we'll just label them that. Okay, we want to call this number 7. And we want to call this other one number 8. Okay, so we've got 2 inputs now labeled number 7 and number 8, and we've enabled them. We have turned those on. So let's go back to the main digital view and look and see what the tags show up over there. Okay, so I have an input called number 7 and I have an input called number 8. Okay, since I've programmed that input there, that information, number 7 and number 8, that tag will propagate throughout the whole system, right? So my digital I/O view, it shows up there, and it will also show up in my event log. So if I have number 7 or number 8 that goes out of tolerance, and I have a trip or alarm, depending on how I have it set up, show up, then I will have an event log item that will say number 7 or number 8, trip or alarm. Okay, so that's kind of what we're doing here with that part of the digital screen. There's also digital outputs that we have set up, and not everybody has these outputs on their machine or desires to have these outputs. But anyway, we'll talk about that here. I have alarm indication, trouble indication, unload indication, running unloaded shutdown timer, horn, and the remote status or local remote status. Now, by turning on these switches here, I can turn the labels on or off over on my digital view. So we'll go back to the digital view again. Okay, and you'll notice I've got all those tags now that have shown up. Now, some people don't have a running unloaded shutdown timer. That's kind of a unique output for a TurboLogix EV MP3. We've got basically the old MP3 panels have got their own running unload shutdown timer function built in. So instead of adding that into our control, a lot of times customers will want to reuse that. So you can turn on that output and then you can put the indication there. And also you'll notice all the test buttons come up along with that too. So you can test those outputs and see what they're doing for you. Okay? So that's some of the things that can be done through the digital screen. Okay, now let's go on to setup and we'll look at the analog. Okay, now analog here, very similar to what we've done in the past. You've got your min and max scales that are available. You can set these up as start permissives. You can set them up with alarms or trips by choosing the faceplate here. It'll tell you a yes or a no. And you can also go to the configuration screen, and here in the config screen, you can look and see what your raw input value is, your scaled value input, high and low start permissives, high and low trip settings if you want to program those in. Not every input needs a low trip setting. For example, interstage air temperature more than likely will not have a low trip setting. However, oil temperature will. And you can also set, of course, the high alarm and trip values. Trip multipliers, and then we also have delays on here so that you can set up so that if a temperature goes out of tolerance slightly and then maybe goes back in tolerance, you don't just get an immediate trip or a shutdown. You can delay that trip or alarm for a few moments. Okay, now let's return. All right, you notice my password 10 minutes has expired, nothing's happened. So we'll go back and put that back in. Okay, we're here, and let's go to the next screen. This is the one, quite a bit of interest here. Okay, this is where the additional analog inputs are set up and programmed for the TurboLogix EV system. So for example, I can change any of these labels, and if I will enable that input, then all of that information passes through the system and it shows up here in the analog screens. You'll notice I've got those here, and guess what? I've only got stages 1 through 2 enabled over on the analog. So let me go back to the setup screen, and we'll go here, and let's just enable our stage 3 vibration, temperature, and pressures. Actually, I don't want that one. I want just those two. So go back over here to data, analog 2, and all of a sudden, all of that information for stage 3 has shown up on this display. That also allows me to turn that on, and say I've got a 2-stage machine and I want to reuse those inputs for, say, motor vibration or motor temperature. Then I can make those changes and that label will show up here as a motor vibration or a motor temperature. It will also go to the trend screens. Let's go over here and look in the vibrations. Now remember, I had it set up as a 2-stage machine earlier, and now I've set and turned on the stage 3. Okay? And the nice thing about this display here, if you'll look, I've got these little labels that are showing up here, and that allows you to understand what input, analog input, that you're using that sensor on. For example, in this situation, we would bring in stage 2 vibration on analog input number 9. And on this situation, we would bring in analog stage 3 analog vibration on input number 12. Now, analog vibration, or inputs I should say, are labeled 0 through, for example, 25 or 23, I'm sorry. So you would be going, your analog inputs start on a 0 basis, and then they're numbered up from that point. Okay, real quick, let's look at your trends for your temperatures. Okay, I've added stage 2 temperature, of course, and stage 3 temperature. Now, as I turn those off, they are eliminated from this screen. So I turn those off, turn those inputs off, and I go over here to my trend screen real quick, and I'll go over vibration, and you'll notice stage 3 vibration is not there any longer, and my stage 3 temperature is no longer available on that screen. So it's really nice because I can turn on and off different features and have them show up in different places. So that's the analog setup, pretty simple, straightforward. We've got multiple pages. Your standard TurboLogix CMC will ship with 24 analog inputs, and your standard MP3 will ship with 25. So you've got a number of inputs that you can bring on and off, and you can create custom labels for and use. Okay, and in this situation, you know, as we've just as an example, we've set up some of these additional inputs here with BB and CC, and you can go back over to your data screens over here, and you can go to analog 3. Notice those show up there. We've got the 5 BB and the 6 CCC input that's going to show up on these screens here.